My name is Bobby Tillman. I'm interviewing Lloyd Henderson, the former city manager of the city of Sachse. Thank you for taking time to visit with us today and to give us some information about you and your work. We want to be sure it is okay with you for us to record this interview and to use it on the Sachse Historical Society's website and other forms of media. Is that okay with you?
That's just fine, thank you.
Excellent. All right. Would you please give us your name?
My name is Lloyd Henderson.
Okay. Would you like to tell us about your family?
I have a son and a daughter. Both of them live in the area, and we get to see each other every Sunday. And each of them have children, so I get to see my grandchildren every Sunday.
Would you tell us where you were born and where did you grow up? Did you live in town, in the country, in a rural area, or did you move much while you were growing up?
I was born in Waco, Texas in 1933, a long time ago. And however, my parents moved to Oklahoma City when I was just real young. Excuse me. So I grew up in Oklahoma City, at the edge of Oklahoma City. Our property line was the city limits line. And so I grew up with 1 foot in the city and 1 foot in the farming area, and I did most of my teenage jobs and work was working on farms and around the animals and stuff like that growing up. I was very active in the Boy Scouts growing up and reached the rank of Eagle Scout when I was 14, I think it was, yeah, in 1948.
Okay. Well, where did you go to? Elementary school, middle school, junior high, high school, wherever that was?
I went to Putnam City Putnam City schools. I started in grade school, went through junior high and high school, and Putnam City was at that time the largest consolidated school in the United States. Now that means that it took in more land mass. My high school class, we had 114, so it was not large student-wise, but it was large as far as the land area that it took in.
Is that where you went to high school also?
Yes, I went to high school there. Was very active in activities, the Letterman's Club. I was president of the Letterman's Club. I played football and made all-conference quarterback in my senior year, and had a real good experience in school. I just had some good friends. I have some friends today. There's 4 of us who are still close that went to grade school together, and we get together and play golf occasionally. And then I go to Oklahoma City and we visit and have a good time. So.
It's good to have friends.
Friends and family is the best thing in the world. Everything else can go away, but as long as you got friends and family, things are okay.
It's a blessing, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Where did you go to college?
When I got out of high school, I worked for Western Electric Company for almost a year, and then I joined the Navy. And I was in, excuse me, I was in the Navy for 4 years, and then when I got out of the Navy, I went to Oklahoma Baptist University and got a bachelor's degree with a major in history and a minor in speech. I'm sorry, my throat's...
You get all this stuff out. Okay. So you were in the Navy. For what years were you in the service?
I went in March of 1952 and came out in March of 1956. And during that time I was on, after I finished boot camp, they sent me to school, to Interior Communications School. And then I served aboard an aircraft carrier for a year. And then the rest of my career, they said I was transferred to the naval submarine base at New London, Connecticut, and worked on submarines during the rest of the time.
Well, did you stay were you on a submarine for a long time?
I wasn't really on a submarine. I was on a submarine tender, but we had about 20 submarines lined up along the Thames River there, and we maintained the hulls and did maintenance work on them.
Where was that? What?
In New London, Connecticut, submarine base.
What carrier did you serve on?
I was on the USS Mindoro, which was a small, actually it's called a carrier escort. It's a small aircraft carrier, and it was actually during the end of the war. They were getting ready to go into Japan. Our troops getting ready to invade Japan, and but they needed more aircraft carriers, and so they were building some tankers. But they took these tankers and put flight decks on them and converted them to aircraft carriers. So it was not a traditional aircraft carrier. We only carried 21 airplanes, and they were, of course, motor driven in those times. They were Grumman F4s.
Did you see any combat over? You were probably right after the war.
No, I was during the Korean thing, and we did mostly training of pilots. We'd go out on Monday, and the pilots would bring the planes in, land, and they'd spend the whole week taking off and landing and doing through their exercises. Then we played war games with the submarines there, where they would fire dummy torpedoes at us, and our planes would try to pick them up before they got us, and that kind of thing.
So that's interesting. Did you enjoy your time in the Navy?
Yes, I did. As a matter of fact, I considered very seriously staying in the Navy and making a career of it, but I decided that no, I'd be better off if I just got out, went to college, and got on with life that way. So. But there are times today where I say, you know, if I had more than one life to live, I think I would live one of them in the Navy. Yeah. I would go in the submarine service too.
That's interesting. Yeah. You mentioned about your college. What did you do? What was basically your first job before or after college? And
well, after
after
college, I went to Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary and got a degree, a master's degree in religious education. And my first job then was I went to work with the Southern Baptist Home Mission Board and directed the Mission Center in El Paso, Texas. It was a community center where we had all kinds of clubs. We had sewing clubs for women. We had all kinds of clubs for teenage kids, like a wood shop club. We had a model airplane building club. We had a photography club, and those kinds of things that were led actually by men from the various churches that are in town who were professional at what the club that they were teaching. We had an auto mechanics club and that kind of thing. And it was a way of reaching out to the teenage kids where we lived. Now, where our center was in what they call the South Pass area. And that's the area between downtown El Paso and the border. And we were right on the main street at Stanton Street that goes from El Paso into Juarez. And so we were, and actually my wife and I were the only Anglos that lived in this area of about 20,000 people. And so there was, a lot of kids there, a lot of teenagers, and our mission was to reach out to them. We used these clubs as a way to reach out to the kids, but we always had Bible study with each of the clubs too. So.
It's a blessing to be able to help people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we enjoyed it.
Like that, learning stuff. What else did you do? You were in El Paso then. About what years was that?
That was in 1964 through 67, and then they asked us to come back to Fort Worth and direct the center there. And it was kind of a place where the seminary students could come and get the experience and learn what we were doing as far as reaching people during the weekdays, that kind of thing. So I was there for about 3 years, and then they asked me to come to the Baptist General Convention of Texas, which is the Southern Baptist denomination in Texas. My purpose there was to, at that time, there's a lot of transition going on in the communities. Churches in the inner city were moving out to the suburbs because that's where the people were, the new people. And as they vacated the suburbs, then your different minorities and racial groups moved in and took over the older houses. So what my job is to work with the churches in the inner city to say, hey, don't move out because the mission field has moved to you. Let's find a way to reach the people who are moving into the inner city. Now, these are not typical Baptists, maybe other denominations, other religions. So the weekday programs and the club programs was a way that we were trying to get the churches to reach out to the people and stay in the community and not, if they did move out, at least keep sponsoring that church and reaching the mission field that was moving in around them. So,
They kind of, the mission field came to the church.
That's true.
That's kind of a...
Yeah.
All right, so you worked there in that, what capacity, what did you do after that?
Okay, well, while I was there, I took sabbatical leave and went to University of Texas at Arlington and got a master's degree in can't even think of it now. Urban
Development?
well, I tell you what, all of a sudden my mind is out of blank.
What do you pick up?
No, master's degree in urban affairs.
Okay.
Excuse me.
What year did you
And that was 1972, I believe, or 1974. And the reason I went there, most of the guys I worked with at the Baptist General Convention of Texas went back to seminary and got more Bible training, that kind of thing. I was more interested in the inner city. And so I went to the University of Texas to learn more about the inner city because that's where my work was, and professionally. And during that time that I was in school, of course I took 1 year off, or one semester, and I'd go full time, but then I had to work off the rest of my degree by semesters, and it took another 3 or 4 years to do that. But during that time, I came in contact with city managers and got to learn more about their work and made a decision that at one time I wanted to be a city manager, wanted to make the change. And so an opportunity came along later on for me to work with the city of Lancaster in an internship program. And so I resigned from the Baptist General Convention of Texas and started the internship program. And then when I'd been working with City of Lancaster about 8 months or so, an opportunity came open at the city of Sanger, and I applied for the job there and got the job there as a city manager. So I went to Sanger and served there for 6 years before coming here.
So you went to University of Texas at Arlington?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's where I went.
Oh, really?
About the same time, 71 through 74, 75, yeah.
Yeah, how about that, yeah.
So what led you to apply for the job as a city manager here in Sachse?
Well, I've been in Sanger for 6 years, and Sanger's is kind of a small town, and it was time for me to get involved in a more of a growing situation. I wanted to get into a city where there was a lot of activity going on. And Sanger at that time was pretty well leveled off, and no growth coming in particularly. And so this job came open, and I applied for it. I liked it because it was here, located in the Dallas area, and that's where I had lived quite a bit, and I had family here in the Dallas area. But most of all, I liked the challenge that this city was facing for this future, because it was right on the edge of beginning to really boom. There's a lot of growth going on at the time even. And it was a kind of a small city that was really coming alive, and I felt like it'd be an exciting place to be. And
Yeah, what was the population? And it wasn't.
the population was under 5,000. It was about 4,500 people at the time.
And what year was it that you came here?
In 1985.
85.
And they had just experienced, right before I got here, quite a spurt in growth, and they had opened up a couple of new subdivisions.
Well, what accomplishments come to your mind during the time that you were here in the city? What, I know that a lot of things did happen, but what would you think would be some of the major accomplishments of your staff or also the city, and then what other memorable events occurred in that time period?
Well, I think as I look back, the thing that I can say that I'm the proudest of being a part of. Now, when I say that, it's the council that does the voting and makes the decisions. The city manager actually handles the staff and makes recommendations to the council. The thing that I am most proud of, I guess, is that in those days the city was what they call a general law city. That meant that they had to go by the laws of the state of Texas as defined in Chapter 11 of the annotated code. And so they were limited in what they could do. One of those limitations was that they could not annex property. Any property that the city annexed had to be voluntarily annexed in by the owner of the property. The problem was that the cities around us were growing, and we were landlocked, so that they were closing in on us, and there less and less land each year. And I was able to work with the committee that the council appointed a charter review committee. And once the city, the committee got the charter together and the city council adopted it, then the city became what they call a home rule city. And a home rule city can set up their own rules, and they can do anything except what the state prohibits, and the state laws prohibit them from doing. So that opened it up so that the city and then the city of Sachse could start annexing property. Well, the first thing the council did was say, get after it. Let's get this property annexed. And so the next, I guess 2-3 years or so was spent in annexing the city limits, expanding the city limits of the city of Sachse. And I think during that time, I don't know how many properties we annexed, probably 40 or so. And we probably almost doubled the size to the land area of the city of Sachse during that time, and put up the barrier out there so that no other cities could take any more land. And had it not been for that, Sachse would have probably been half the size it is today. And so that was one of the major early accomplishments.
Was that about the city limits that we have now?
Yes, that's the city limits we have now. Yeah.
And what else? Didn't mean to interrupt you. You just fixed to mention some other things that.
Okay. Well, of course, with that growth comes the need for expanding the infrastructure of the city, and we were able to build the water tower out on Pleasant Valley Road, and along with that, we got sold bonds in order to build that water tower. But we made enough interest off of those bonds in order to go ahead and build the service center that we have out there now, the Sachse Service Center, and pay cash for it, not have to get a loan or anything like that to build a service center. We built it off the interest that we had from selling the bonds. So I always felt good about that. During that time, the city was growing, and we had to install a lot of water lines in order to serve the city. We dealt with a lot of problems. The major problem during those days was the city was in kind of I'm going to say a fight with the city of Garland over the sewer rates. That was a major issue, and that caused a lot of conflict. The citizens never understood that the council really didn't have control of that. The city of Garland was the one that had control, but we finally were able to sit down and negotiate a reasonable price that kind of helped everybody settle down about that. So.
Yeah, I heard about some of that.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
How have you seen the city of Sachse change over the years you've been here, and how do you see the city of Sachse changing over the next several years? Mm-hmm. You mentioned some of that, but I mean, as far as like the makeup of the city, Anything comes to mind?
Yeah, the problem with the city in the earlier days was that its only income, its basic income was off property taxes. There was very little business in town. And that meant that there's pretty much a burden on the property owners to support the city. As a result, we didn't have much money to work with. It's hard to improve the streets. It was hard to do things, because we just didn't have the money. But over the years, we finally passed the sales tax ordinance. And over the past few years, the change I have seen has been the coming of the business community to the city. It has grown out this way with the development of Firewheel as our neighbor down here. That's brought more businesses into the city of Sachse, and it's increased the city's revenue because of the sales tax revenue. So the city is able to do more as far as improvements in the city is concerned. And so I think that's a major change that I've seen over the years, is the development of the businesses here.
Do you feel Sachse is a good place to live or work? And would you encourage folks to move here?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I love the city of Sachse. It's an excellent place. Now, as far as work is concerned, I don't know that there's that many jobs. There's small businesses, nothing really large at this point. But there's a lot of community spirit. There's a lot of good community activities. The high schools and grade schools are very active, and a lot of things for the children to do. There's the baseball program and all kinds of programs here in the city. It's kind of a small town doing big things, I think, and so it's a good place to come and get involved. Got a good library, good chamber of commerce, and a lot of good things going on here.
I've heard it told that a lot of the principal come in it would be not unusual to see families at the ball games that don't even have kids playing in the sport because they enjoy just coming and being a participant.
Right.
Tell us about some organizations that you've been associated with and any that you're currently involved in. Obviously the Sachse Historical Society, but what organization have you?
I've been involved with the Historical Society since the first meeting, right from the very beginning. And of course, I majored in history, so I really enjoy history, and the history of Sachse. I've been kind of very especially interested in that. As a matter of fact, out of that I've written a book called the City of Sachse, Texas, the beginning years, 1886 to 1996, in which it covers mainly the development of the town itself since 1952. So a little bit of history before then. But I've been involved very heavily in the Historical Society. Other than that, I was a member of the Chamber of Commerce when I lived here and served as president 1 year. I don't know of any other.
What do you feel that our city is doing well, and what do you think it could do better? In a reasonably short period.
I think the city is doing well by creating the community spirit that it has here. One of the things before the high school, this was a problem before the high school was built. There was not a lot of unity among the people. Everybody knew everybody, but after the school was built, and then there became a spirit that was, I think, centered around the high school, especially because of the football team and stuff like that, the ball teams. So there's just definitely a spirit here. What they could do better, I don't know. It takes money to do anything, so if they had more money, I'm sure they could do a lot of better things.
What special events come to mind during your time here in Sachse, and which ones stick in your mind of those that you might mentioned, are there some events that occurred here, good, bad, or different, or?
Well, of course, one of the events they have here, of course, is the Fall Fest, which is an annual event, and it's well participated in, and everybody looks forward to attending that. That's the community fair, so to speak, I guess. I'm not sure about any events that come to mind. I'm sure there are some, but none of them really come to mind. Maybe you could trigger my mind on some of them.
Fall Fest, of course, is one on. We've had the veterans celebration.
Oh yeah,
the 4th of July stuff. That's really kind of come a long way in the last 2-3 years.
Yes, the 4th of July parade and activities and all that, and then the Historical Society sponsors the Veterans Day program, which is really a great program.
We have found that many folks we have interviewed have been in special places. They have done unusual or unexpected things or met really interesting people. Which places, people, things, or whatever like that come to mind that you might have met over your career, of different people or places? I know you travel with the Navy. You probably went a lot of places that most of us would never get to go. But I mean, people that you may have met, or
I don't know that I've ever met any famous special people. There are people here in Sachse that have become special that I've worked with over the years. And I'm thinking about, for instance, Mayor Larry Holden was the mayor here. Did an excellent job, and he and I had a good working relationship, and he was a very special person to me. I guess the most famous person I've met was Allie Reynolds, and nobody knows who Allie Reynolds is, but he pitched baseball for the New York Yankees and won the World Series back in 1950. And he was the brother of my high school football coach, and so he came to the game one night, and I got to meet him and some of his friends that were with him.
But that was a good time for the folks, you know.
Yes, everybody was excited because our coach is his brother, so we really got into the ball games. And those days, Oklahoma City didn't have a ball team, so we could support the Yankees without being disloyal to anybody.
What have you done since leaving the city of Sachse, city management position, and what are your plans for your future?
Well, of course, when I left here, I retired, and so I've done retirement things. I'm not a fisherman, I'm not a hunter, but I am a golfer, so I played quite a bit of golf during that time. I spent a lot of time doing research for the book, and I've written some things, and I enjoy doing research and that kind of thing, and spend a lot of family time. So it's mainly been a retirement type of activities.
You mentioned that you've been with the Historical Society since it started. When did the Historical Society actually get started? Do you recall?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, I was a co-starter of it, I guess you might say. And back in when I came here in 1985, there was no Historical Society, but there was a talk going around that we really needed to start gathering artifacts, and we need to start writing the history and all that. And I was at a funeral of one of the local guys here who had died. He was the older guy, grew up members. At the graveside, whispered to me that said, "There goes another one, and we didn't get his story." And I said, "Well, let's talk about that at council meeting, next council meeting." So we did. I put it on the agenda, and we started talking about how the older people were dying off. The artifacts that they had that would be good museum pieces were being distributed among their families, and that we needed a group in town that would do historical stuff, a historical society. So it ended up with them talking about, well, should it be appointed by the council members or should it be just volunteers? And they decided it ought to be non-political by volunteers who were interested in it. So I called Joe Stone, and had him put together a list of 10 people who might be interested in the Historical Society. So he did, and he called 5 of them, and I called 5 of them, and we asked them to meet. It was the last Sunday, I believe, it was in April, the last Sunday, I believe, to meet us at City Hall. We wanted to start the Historical Society, and so there were 6 people that showed up that day, and so that was the beginning of the Historical Society. So I've been a member of it ever since then, except for about 4 years. After I retired, I kind of dropped out, and then they asked me to come back on after that time. So I've been a member of it about 19 years altogether, I think, something like that.
What do you feel that the Sachse Historical Society should do to preserve the history of Sachse and inform those interested about our community? We got the building here and things like that. What other things do you think that we might could do to maybe help preserve the history of our area that we're not doing now?
Yeah, well, of course, the museum here has been a real step forward. In the early days, we had no place to put things, so we really couldn't ask for stuff because we couldn't assure people that it'd be secure. So, but now with this building and everything, they have a good secure place to collect items and to put them on display. I have always felt like that the history of Sachse is not something that happened a long time ago. It's something that happens every day, and that the Historical Society ought to be active in recording what's going on today. This Historical Society should have been getting a record of the water tower being built, for example. They ought to be recording the streets being paved. Today, they ought to record buildings being built, the City Hall and all that kind of thing. That should have all been recorded by the Historical Society. The problem is everybody's got jobs and family and don't have time to really do that. But to me, the mission of the Historical Society is to record what's going on today, because 20 years from now, 50 years from now, that will be the history of that day. And so why wait till then to go back and try to find out what we did now, if we could record now and give it to them then?
Yeah, well.
And but that's been a problem, and I wish there's some way that we could remedy that problem. The other thing that I would like to see the Historical Society do is we are dependent on people to come here to see what the history of Sachse is about. I feel like that we as a society ought to have some real nice cases with artifacts in them that we could put out at the bank or at the City Hall or some big business in town where people come to do business, and they could see at least a part of the history of the city of Sachse in a cabinet case. And I think that we would reach more people that way. We could take those cases and rotate them around and change them out every once in a while, so that over a period of years, people who come into the bank would see a new part of the city history on display. That's another thing I'd like to see us do. Mm-hmm. But again, that takes time and work, and we've just not had that kind of people available to do that kind of thing.
Well, there's more people moving in, so those may come to fruition here soon. Okay, we've mentioned about your book here a couple of times. I want to make sure we get this in the calendar. This is a very nice book. Would you tell us a little bit about what prompted you to write it, what the content of it is, just a little bit about it, and it's available for sale here at the Sachse Historical Society, of course.
Well, I really didn't intend to write a book when I started writing. Joe Stone was an old timer here. He's been here for years and years and years. Born here, grew up here. And
we didn't see the book when he held it up.
Okay.
We could redo that.
Is that okay?
Well, we can't see it. Should I pan down? When you hold it up, it's not all the way in the picture either. So should I tilt it down?
Let's just go ahead here a little bit like that, yeah.
Oh, backed out. Okay. Yeah. Oh, there, that's better. You got the glare off of it there.
Now we can edit all this first. What we're doing here. Yeah, whenever we get through talking about it, you can kind of tilt it back up.
Just tilt it back up.
in, yeah.
Okay.
This book is titled "The City of Sachse: The Beginning Years, 1886 to '96." It's the first chapter is about the railroad coming to town and building the town. But most of the book covers the development of the town since 1952, and so it's mainly about the growth of the different departments, the water system, and those kinds of issues. Now, I didn't really start out to write a book, but Joe Stone and I were very good friends. And Joe's an old timer, been here, he was born here right down on Pleasant Valley Road, and grew up here, knows everybody in town. And he and I became friends, and we'd sit around and talk about the history, about things that happened in Sachse, because that's what I was interested in. We'd sit on the back of his pickup truck, on the tailgate. We'd sit out in the cemetery, and just, spend a lot of time just him telling me stories. And I kept saying to Joe, you need to write that down. That's something that needs to be recorded, And he said, yeah, well, sometime I will, maybe, And so I'd say next time, I said, Joe, you need to write that down. This went on for a couple of years. Joe, you need to write that down. And one day he fired back at me and said, Lloyd, why don't you write it down? And I said, well, I guess it's going to get written down. I guess I better do it. So I started writing these stories he'd tell me, and these incidents that happened, and the way things got the way they are, and the way things developed. I just go home and I'd write them down. And after a while, I got to realizing, I got a chapter on how the address system came into being, and I learned a lot about different things that happened in town. And I thought, there may be some material for a book here. And I thought, I'm going to increase or kind of get some more information about the stories he was telling me. So I went to City Hall, and Terry Smith was city secretary at the time, and he helped me to get out the minutes of the city council minutes. I went back to the very beginning of the 1956 the minutes, and started reading all the minutes. And I'd make notes, and then so out of those minutes came the information, the research for this book. And so I just soon I got to realize, I got enough information here. Here's a chapter of stuff, and here's a chapter. And so then I got to the point where I thought, I'll just go ahead and work toward the idea of maybe the information for a book. And so that's actually how it came about.
And it covers the years from 18?
Yeah, 18.
Mostly from 1952.
Yeah.
After the city was kind of.
Well, actually 1956 up till 96. I retired in 96, and I thought, hey, I know what happened up till 96, and from then on I didn't want to have to do all that research.
Well, you mentioned Mr. Stone. He was one of the ones I wish we could have done this with.
Yeah. Now there is an interview with him on the Historical Society interviews, but it's not all thorough as it should be, I think.
Are there any other books or articles you've written or intend to write, or?
No, not really. I've just recently written a history of the Historical Society, but it's just kind of a mimeograph kind of thing. And I've done a collection of William Sachse's deeds. Now, at one time, William Sachse owned as much as 4,000 acres around. I say at one time, it really wasn't at one time, but he was really in the land business. He was a rancher and farmer, but he was also in the land business of buying and selling land. And so over the course of years, he owned a little over 4,000 acres. So I started researching those deeds to find out where that land was and when he owned it. And so I have at home a collection of those deeds and a list of the people he bought them from and how many acres there are and how much he paid for them. And it's quite interesting to go back and see buying 160 acres for a couple dollars on the acre that's now selling for several thousands of acres. It's kind of makes you
$10 a foot.
Yeah. So
we may need to see if we can copy of that information and include it somehow?
Well, I'm gonna give it to the Historical Society someday when I get finished with it. I've quit working on it here in recent years, but I'll try to pick it up and do some more on it.
What are your plans? You're retired, you're still working with the Historical Society, you live here in the area, you have any immediate plans, or you gonna stay here in the area?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Far
I don't have any plans except stay active, as much active as I can. And I find that's the secret to retirement, is having something to do. And I've so far not run out of anything to do. I like to read. Texas history is my subject. I like to read, so I do quite a bit of reading, and that's really my plans.
Is there anything else that you would like to tell us about that you've done or been or would like to do? Or
well, I think we've pretty well covered everything. When I leave here, I'm sure I'll think of 50 different things I wish I had included, but
we can always do an addendum.
okay.
Thank you, Lord. I appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you, Bobby. It's been a pleasure to visit with you, and hope this will be of some benefit to you.